Benvenuti, welcome to Valentina's culinary voyage. This is where I recreate for you the 7 dishes that most impressed me or have stayed with me the longest as a result of my 7-day Italian Sojourn cruise. I'm going to take you now to a dish that I ate at the wonderful, amazing, extraordinary Manfredi's. Here is my version of it. This is an osso buco. So these are shank steaks with the bone marrow, as you can see. The osso, the bone with the hole, osso buco, hole. Celery, carrot and onion, fried off in olive oil is how it all sets off. So onion and carrot and celery. Now I just want these to fry off, and this is what they call the holy trinity of Italian food. Carrot, celery, onion. Repeated again and again to form the basic flavour that spells out Italy in soups, in stews, all sorts of things. I think I can bring this heat down a little bit now. So my other ingredients. I have some passata, which are canned tomatoes that have been whizzed up into a puree and then sieved. I have some tomato puree that I have diluted in a little bit of hot water. I have my 3 beautifully marbled, wonderful ossobuco steaks and some white wine. What's going to happen now is that I'm going to move these vegetables and I'm going to put the meat in, and then I'm going to put the vegetables back. Okay? The reason for doing it this way is just to sort of ensure that you don't get any burnt, bitter bits happening. Right, so I'm going to raise the heat, and now in go our beautiful steak. This is enough, easily enough for 6 people, probably 8. I am not touching these until the time has come to turn them. How do I know when it's come time to turn them? When there is colouring moving up the sides of all my steaks. That's what's telling me what's going on underneath. If I keep flipping them over, I'm just going to keep creating steam and toughen the meat. The meat's going to be like old boots, and that's not the idea at all. This ends up being a dish that is so tender you can literally spoon the meat into shreds at the end of it. Let's see if I've got some nice colour going here. Yep, that's lovely. Now this one, yep. And now this one here. At this point I'm going to give them a little sprinkling of salt. But I'm going to mix my passata and my tomato puree together. The vegetables can go back in. Let's bring the heat down again. Now this has to now undergo a process with a wonderful Italian word. The word means to simmer in Italian, and the word is crogiolare. It has to crogiolare for a really long time until the meat is literally falling off the bone. So I'm putting in the wine. That's about half a bottle I've put in there. And next I need to raise the heat again to burn off the alcohol. Almost there, almost there. It is no longer smelling like a chemistry lab. So the moment has come to bring the heat right down. The tomato and the tomato puree are going in now. And basically at this point, you need to cover this up, and you can either cook it on a really low heat to crogiolare on the top, or you can put it into a nice low oven and it just cooks for a couple of hours until the meat is falling off. And it is traditionally served with a yellow saffron risotto. This is a dish that comes from Milan. How to make a risotto? Well, the first thing you need, I know it sounds really obvious, but the first thing you need is the right kind of rice. The most well-known ones are carnaroli. This one is carnaroli. Carnaroli has the biggest, fattest grain, And for that reason, it overcooks. It's less likely to overcook, because the big thing about getting a risotto wrong is ending up making a rice pudding. You don't want to be making rice pudding. You're making Italy's great rice dish. Once you've got the right rice, which is starchy, so that it loses the starch, and the starch mixes with the stock, which is what creates the creaminess in a risotto. It's not adding butter, it's not adding cream, it's all coming from the rice itself, which is why it's so important. The next thing you need is a member of the allium family. By that I mean an onion, a red onion, a brown onion, a white onion, a leek, garlic, chives. In this particular case, it's an onion that has been very, very finely chopped, and then rather oddly, it's soaked in cold water for about half an hour. It reduces the aggressive quality of the onion. You can skip this if you want, or just get a milder onion, but basically you want the flavour of the onion not to overpower the flavour of the saffron, which is what this is all about, really. So you reduce its aggressive quality by soaking it in cold water. Then you need to pour it into a sieve lined with a cloth, and then you just take the four corners of the cloth like this and gently squeeze out the water. My stock is in here. This is a beef and veal and chicken stock I've got going on here all together. And this is my risotto pot. Now, the shape of the pot is essential when it comes to making a risotto. What you're trying to do in the process of the cooking is to get the rice to absorb the flavour from the stock and the other ingredients that you're going to add into it. You are not evaporating liquid out. So you need depth in order to keep everything being absorbed rather than evaporating out. So I'm going to put the onion in the bottom of my pan. This is about 100 grams of butter here. It's a lot of butter. I'm going to put unsalted butter, because the salt in the butter will burn before the fat in the butter. So always unsalted butter when you're cooking, okay? That way you've got much more control, not only over the seasoning, but also over the temperature and what's happening with the rest of your recipe. I'm also adding to it the marrow taken out from one of the steaks. So we're talking really rich here. And what has to happen now is that the butter and the marrow will melt, and the onion will start to cook, and the onion must never brown. This is absolutely essential. This is what makes, I call risotto a commitment recipe. You know, you've got to be committed to making this. If you're not in the mood, walk away and make pasta, or you know, call for a takeout, or go to a restaurant or something. Risotto requires you to be committed to what is going on in the pan. It's a relationship between you and the rice, linked by your favourite wooden spoon. It doesn't take that long to make. It's a great stress reliever, and the end result is truly a masterpiece. This is called soffriggere. It's the soffritto part of the operation. It is followed by the addition of all the rice in one go, and then the rice grains are toasted, and that part of the process is called la tentazione, the temptation. Because during the temptation, la tentazione, the rice wants you to add the stock, but you really do have to play hard to get. You have to make sure that each and every one of those rice grains are sealed with heat on the inside, so that they don't fall apart when you add the liquid and just create basically a mush. So I'm just letting everything melt together. And now I can perhaps raise the heat a little bit to let this cook off. I'm just going to take my eye off that for a moment to prepare my saffron. So here's my saffron. I'm going to put 2 little pinches in there, and I'm just going to cover them with some of the stock so that they soak, and they will turn my risotto its glorious sunshine yellow. Okay, so I think I'm getting to the point where I can taste my onion to make sure that it's not crispy. Yeah, that's lovely and soft. So now, all the rice, these big, fat, chalky grains of rice that leave this residue on your skin like expensive talcum powder, they go straight in. This is called risottare, and it's la tentazione. You can immediately see that the rice grains have changed in appearance. So what is happening, each rice grain is constituted of two shells. So the interior shell is sealing up to keep the shape of the grain, whilst the outer shell is getting ready to basically fall off and release the external rib of starch once I start adding in my stock. So what tends to happen as you go through the steps of the tentazione is that the sound that the rice makes start to change. It starts to sound like it's really complaining. Come on, add in that stock, get on with it. But you really do have to hang on, because you will know that you've got this right if, when you add the stock, you're rewarded by something called il sospiro, the sigh of relief that the rice makes because you finally started the actual cooking process, that you've added in the stock. So if you get a sigh, which is like the sound of a sigh, and a nice column of steam rising up, you know you'll have got this right. If it's a bit like sort of nothing happened, you probably should have hung on a bit longer. Everything seems very hot and bothered in here, so I'm going to go for it, and hopefully we will be rewarded with our column of steam and our sigh of relief. Il sospiro, let's see. Oh, there you go, you see? Tutto bene, tutto bene. Now don't add your stock with an eyedropper as if you were performing some kind of delicate experiment. You want to swamp so that you've got this kind of sloppy texture each time, okay? Don't hold back, otherwise you'll be here all night. You've got to be adding stock generously, and then what you do is you keep stirring until your spoon draws a clear wake through the rice, just like the parting of the Red Sea, really. And that is the sign that the risotto is ready for you to add more liquid. So don't add it before, don't add it after. Wait for that clear wake to open up. So now we can go with more. And you just keep going. Now the reason, the fact that it is something that requires your attention and a constant stirring action to make a real risotto, of course, means that it's not a great dinner party dish, unless, of course, it's that kind of dinner party where you just can't wait to leave your guests for a while. We've all had one of those. Okay, so now I'm going to add in the saffron, which has had time for it to infuse with the stock. So here we go. I'm just going to pour it all in. That gorgeous yellow sunburst is coming through now. Okay, I think it's time now to raise the heat again a little bit more. This is a long and careful process that is done with a lot of love and needs to be done from scratch. So I was doubly impressed, triply impressed when I was served this on board the Viking Jupiter, just how amazing it was. Okay, so the risotto has absorbed all the stock, and now I'm going to add the other half of my butter. So I put 50 grams in at the beginning. Here's the second 50 grams going in at the end. And you basically need to stir this until the butter is completely melted and disappears. And then you also add in a great big heap of freshly grated Parmigiano Reggiano. Now the butter has melted, the cheese has disappeared, so the lid goes on, the risotto stays off the heat. You have 4 minutes basically before this is ready to open up the lid, give it one last final big stir and then serve. Kind of fold in some air and get it really, really super, super creamy, and then onto the plate like so. Just going to try and make sure it stays together as much as possible. My buco. Hoopla. Amazing. Now, I think I'm going to add just a little bit of this amazing sauce. There we go. Now, if you wanted to, you could top that off with just a sprinkling of chopped parsley, but I think that all it needs is a dusting of the king of cheeses, Parmigiano Reggiano. And all that's left for me to say is buon appetito. Osso buco with risotto alla Milanese.